Well, I'm sorry to cut out on you as I did last week and not finish the story. But actually, I wanted for us to take a little bit of time to think about this, the actual text that we're looking at in Acts chapter 5, because it's a text that's done an awful lot of damage. So I hope that I kind of set it up for you okay in our last talk. And today, let's just get back to it. So Acts chapter 5 then, and verse 1. But a man named Ananias, with his wife Sapphari, sold a piece of property. And with his wife's knowledge, important, he kept back for himself some of the proceeds and brought only part of it and laid it at the apostles' feet. So we saw that it's interesting, just a small point, but it's worth looking at. It's interesting to note that the text is very careful here, that the money was laid at the apostles' feet as opposed to being placed in the apostles' hands. I say that because you need to be careful. The money wasn't given to the apostle or to the pastor for their own discretionary or worse, personal use. It was given for the stewardship of the community. It was laid at the feet of the apostles, and that was really very, very important. But there are some incredibly significant and very important misconceptions about this text that we've got to have a look at. Number one, this is not the picture of the New Covenant tithe. There is no such thing as a New Covenant tithe. Remember, please, that in the New Covenant, the grace of giving has outclassed the law of tithing. The whole conversation around tithing is a bankrupt conversation. There is it's just not there. I've got a paper on it. If you want to read it on my website, thegraceproject.com, look up in it, go into the articles section and have a look at an article called No Laughing Matter, and it's all there for you. It's in my book, The Bonsai Conspiracy, as well. Just have a look and you'll see that. I'm not going to get lost on that today, but it's important that you understand it's not a picture of the New Covenant tithe. Secondly, it's important that you recognise that the members of the community were not obliged and they were not expected to sell their possessions and give their money to the church. That is not what the image is here at all. This was spontaneous. This was just how the community lived. It was just the way it was. There was a generosity amongst them. Do you remember in the book of Exodus, I think it is, or one of the Old Testament books, I'm sure it's Exodus, that the leaders had to give instructions to stop bringing stuff. We don't need any more stuff. I'll tell you what, I've never been in a church meeting where I've ever heard anybody from the front say, stop giving money, we've got enough now. No, we'll always find something else for it. So number one, it wasn't a picture of the New Covenant tithe, important, because there's no such thing. Number two is that the believers weren't given under obligation or instruction. That was not the proposition either. Number three is there was no sense in which God would bless them if they did and God would curse them if they didn't. No, that's not correct. Or in this case, there is no suggestion that God would kill them if they didn't, and that's really important because we've misused this. This has been a hugely manipulated text. They are communities, they are not communes. And remember, this is a group of people for whom the word for them is silver and gold we don't have, but what we have we freely give you. And their whole notion is what we have we freely give to you. That's just it. So the money's not for personal use, it's for distribution, that's important. And what makes this horrendous, what makes this so bad, is the fact that, firstly, it's duplicitous, number one, but it's about how the community is kind of invaded by this opposite spirit through the agency of this golden couple. I told you last time, these are like the kind of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie of the New Covenant. I mean, these are the golden ones. This is ridiculous. So again, let's look. Acts 5 then, we've seen this verse, and I want to move on now to verse 3. But Peter said, Ananias, how is it that Satan has filled your heart, or if you like, how is it that Satan has laid it in your heart, to lie to the Holy Spirit, to keep back for yourself part of the proceeds of the land? Now, watch this. It seems clear that the remember I told you this is the Con-mutiny, the spirit. It seems clear that the con had been well thought out and there's a long time in the planning. You see, Not only did he seek to embezzle the community, he sought to bedazzle the community. And it's the bedazzlement that leaves you breathless, because you're going, what? He comes and lays this money at the feet of the apostles and says, look, this is for you, this is what I've sold, this is all that I have. There was a horrific article that appeared, in 2007 about the head of the 9/11 charity who was asked to resign. The Tanya Head, I think the lady's name was asked to resign as president of this non-profit organisation for the World Trade Center survivors, because the New York Times reported it, and it said that this lady had made these extraordinary stories about how she'd survived all these attacks when she was in the building, when the building was ripped apart and all the rest of it. Anyway, the top and the bottom of it was she wasn't even in the World Trade Center. And when she was called to give account of this, she said, I've done nothing illegal. And you think, okay, but you kind of not getting the spirit of this lady, and what's the matter with you? Now, the themes of the New Covenant are about togetherness, remember? Unity and equality. Now, remember, Jesus gives us the template for that. He who was in the very form of God didn't consider equality with God as something to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking on the form of a bondservant. And one of the things that we see here for us is really very tricky, because we don't do this very well. We don't want equality, we want superiority. Paul, when he writes later in the same chapter of Philippians, he says, look, I'm longing to send Timothy to you because I've got nobody else like him. Everybody else, the truth of the matter is, they're not concerned for your welfare, they're concerned for their own. They all seek their own interests, not the interests of Christ. He talks about his brother Epaphroditus, and he says, Epaphroditus has got such a different spirit. He was distressed. He needs to come and see you because he's distressed that you were distressed and he was ill. I mean, this is a kind of a different order. But now watch what Peter says as there he's confronted with Ananias, and he says to Ananias, what is wrong with you? Now, by the way, no one's told Peter how much the property's worth. No, Peter hasn't seen the land registry. Peter just knows, and Peter says, Ananias, what's up with you? Why have you lied to the Holy Spirit? And the Bible then says this. It says, you have lied, listen to this, you have lied not to men, but to God. When Ananias heard these words, verse 5, he fell down and breathed his last. Now, let me say this. I don't think that you can deduce from that text that this is a harm miracle. To begin with, the goal of all discipline is restoration. There is no suggestion here that Peter killed him. There is no suggestion that Peter cursed him. This isn't like the fig tree. This wasn't like that. And you might be thinking about the illusion of the fig tree that's holding out that it's got fruit, but it actually doesn't have, and Jesus cursed it. No, this is not like that at all. That was actually a story about faith, because Jesus was trying to move those people on from saying, well, hang on a minute, you've got to move from having faith in God to having the faith of God. This has nothing to do with that. Literally, what the expression means, literally, the person exhaled or breathed his last life force. I tell you what, here's how I read this. Ananias was caught cold. Peter says to him, Ananias, what the hell? What are you doing? You're bringing this here. Who are you trying to kid? You're not lying to me. I don't care. It's almost like he's saying, it doesn't make any difference to me whether you sold the property or didn't sell the property. What are you doing? You're not lying to me. You've lied to God. And I think there's a very nice West Indian expression that will fit here beautifully for you. I think the man died of shame. I think the man literally had a heart attack and died of shame. You see, what he had done was so contrary to the way of the community of these people. It was like, and he was caught red-handed with it. And I just think the man just died of shame. Now watch this. It says a great fear came upon them all. Fear or awe, if you like. Maybe fear in this case is probably a better translation. It was like, what the heck? You know, because I don't think they've got the sophistication at this stage to get it. They just see Ananias captured, literally captured, and he just drops down dead. Now, as I said, nobody has spoken a negative word into his soul. Peter's not cursed him. He's not done that. And please read the text carefully to see that. Now it says, verse 6, so the young men rose and wrapped him, and they carried him out and they buried him. After an interval of about 3 hours, his wife came in, not knowing what would happen. And Peter said to her, tell me how much you sold the land for. And was it this much? She said, yes, this much. Okay, quickly. Amazing, number one. Amazing. That 3 hours, buried him, gone. Don't even tell his wife, gone. Now, Sapphari is given the opportunity to choose the truth. The fact that she doesn't choose the truth proves her collusion. This, I'm afraid, is her temptation in the wilderness. Peter's words are not words of a curse, they're words of absolute anguish. Peter says to her, Sapphari, let me ask you a question. Tell me whether you sold the land for so much. She stands there, as brazen as you can be. Yep, that's how much we sold it for. And Peter says to her, how is it that you've agreed together to lie to the Spirit of the Lord? Now, by the way, Ananias and Sapphari are a type of the wrong type of togetherness for us. That they fall at the apostles' feet, maybe a little bit of irony. But here you have the same thought, that she just collapses. Well, Ananias and Sapphari are Christians? Of course. There's no suggestion. It said that they've lost their salvation. No, it doesn't say that. It says what happens was they died and they were removed from the community. It doesn't say they lost their place in heaven. It didn't say they lost their salvation. The point is, they lost the privilege of living in the kingdom, this side of the eternal divide. And the Bible says, and great fear came upon the whole church and upon all who heard these things. Now here's the really interesting thing. This is the first mention of the word church in the New Covenant. And great fear came upon the whole church. They were a community prior to this, but great fear came upon the whole church and upon all who heard those things. Oh yeah. I do think that Ananias and Sapphari are the Adam and Eve of the New Covenant. But the wonderful, glorious truth is, because of the last Adam, then Ananias and Sapphari will live to speak another day. Ananias and Sapphari are Christians? Yes, I believe they were. I don't see any suggestion here that they lost their salvation. Something tragic happened to them about that, which there is no doubt. What happened was they lost the privilege of living in the kingdom. And the privilege of living in the kingdom, being part of that expanding life of Christ, was worse than death itself. But truly they both died of shame. Of that, there is no doubt in my mind whatsoever. The heartbreak of this is this, and I think this is the seed that they sowed. In the 11th verse it says this, and great fear came upon the whole church and upon all who heard these things. Well, this is the very first mention of the word church in the book of Acts. Before they were a community. Now they're a church. It's so sad that once sin had entered in, they became a church. There's something about that we might want to think about. Well, of course, we're going to see more extraordinary miracles happen in the tail end of Acts chapter 5. But the moment we move across into Acts chapter 6, you're going to see that a certain sense of government is introduced, and that's really sad, because sadly, the seed of what's been sown is going to bear a fruit that is very contrary to the spirit that we've seen up to now. But that will do for now. We've thought about the Con-mutiny of the Spirit. We've thought about this story of Ananias and Sapphari. The takeaways for me are for you to remember very clearly. There is no suggestion here that Peter or John or any of the apostles cursed this couple. They weren't killed. It says they died. And I will believe to my dying breath that all that happened to them, I say all, sadly what happened to them, was they died of shame. But because, and I say again, because of last Adam, what happened in this Eden would not cause them to be banished from the garden forever, or indeed for the way to the tree of life to be blocked to them. Oh no, they will still live on in the next life. God bless you. Bye-bye.